In my HOA neighborhood, a woman in a $60,000 Escalade ran over my trash can 57 times. I replaced it with a concrete one and watched her total her own SUV instead. What began as her morning ritual of smashing my property ended with criminal charges, a $12,000 settlement, and a very expensive lesson about what happens when you pick the wrong neighbor to bully. Picture the scene. Early morning, sky still gray, coffee just starting to drip. Then crack. The sharp report of plastic exploding, followed by the scrape of metal against asphalt. A pearl-white Escalade punches through my trash bin, scatters my garbage across the driveway, and speeds off like nothing happened. But bullies never expect their targets to fight back, with actual concrete evidence. By the time this was over, that self-appointed compliance officer had wrecked her own vehicle, exposed a $47,000 embezzlement operation, and learned that some people don't buckle just because someone shows up with a clipboard and fake authority. What would you do if your neighbor treated your property like her personal demolition derby every single morning? Drop a comment and say where you're watching from. I'm curious how widespread this brand of HOA insanity really is. Let me roll back to the beginning. My name's Marcus Holloway. I'm 45, an electrician with 22 years in the trade. Recently divorced, fighting for joint custody of my two kids, Emma, 16, and Tyler, 14. We live in Pinewood Gardens, one of those cookie-cutter HOA subdivisions in suburban Ohio where the grass is supposed to be exactly 2.5 inches tall, and you get 3 approved mailbox colors, and that's it. I bought the corner lot 3 years ago, right after the divorce. New start. The kids could each have their own room, the schools were decent, and the neighborhood looked safe on paper. What I didn't factor in was dealing with Brenda Whitmore. Brenda is 52, a widow, and has decided she's the neighborhood's compliance officer, a role that doesn't exist anywhere in the bylaws. She drives a pearl-white Escalade the size of a studio apartment. She moved in around the same time I did, after her husband died. No kids. Retired bank manager. She knows every rule by heart and treats our HOA dues like money she personally approves and directs. She's tight with our HOA president, Gerald Thornfield, which makes her feel untouchable. Geography is key here. My corner lot means city trash pickup requires my can to be within 3 feet of the curb every Tuesday. That puts it right along the path of Brenda's daily 6:15 a.m. power drive. The first incident was a Tuesday in September, second week of school. I'm stirring oatmeal, listening for the garbage truck that's still 20 minutes away, when I hear it crack. I run outside to find my brand new $23 Home Depot trash can obliterated, garbage sprayed across my driveway like a confetti bomb of banana peels, cereal boxes, and coffee grounds. There's Brenda, backing up her Escalade, rolling down the window with this plastic, concerned smile. "Oh my," she coos with zero sincerity. "These streets are just so narrow. I hope you weren't too attached to that old thing." Old thing. I'd bought it the week before, but I stayed calm, figuring it was an honest mistake. I spent 20 minutes picking soggy trash out of my driveway while diesel fumes drifted through the air. Emma and Tyler watched from the front window, mortified that their dad was crawling around outside in pajamas. That week, it happened 3 more times. Same setup. 6:15 a.m., engine rumble, crunch of plastic under steel, and Brenda drives off like nothing happened. By Friday, I was suspicious. By the following Tuesday, I was sure. Mrs. Olivia, my elderly neighbor across the street, confirmed it in her measured English. "She takes long way on purpose," she told me. "Plenty of room on the other side, but she always drives close to your can." I tried being reasonable first. I caught Brenda on one of her afternoon patrols. "Hey, about the trash can getting hit." She cut me off with a syrupy smile. "Marcus, I understand you're new to community living. These streets were designed for normal-sized vehicles, not oversized containers blocking traffic flow. Perhaps you should consider placement timing adjustments." Placement timing adjustments. As if there's a time of day when the trash gets collected without the can at the curb. That night, I dug into property rights, HOA bylaws, and city codes. Turns out, trash cans on the public right-of-way are still personal property. The city requires them within 3 feet of the curb on collection day. And our HOA? No rules at all about timing or can materials. Only that bins can't be visible from the street except on pickup day. By the end of the month, I'd replaced 4 trash cans for a total of $92. The kids were stressed about the daily drama. My custody evaluator was making notes about neighborhood stability issues. Something had to change. That's when the smirk started. Brenda began making deliberate eye contact during her morning passes. Little satisfied smile, like she was proud of her work. Game on. 2 weeks into October, she escalated from breaking plastic to psychological warfare. I came home from a job site and found a certified letter on the counter. That kind of envelope never brings good news. The notice read, in full legal language, improper trash receptacle placement creating traffic hazard. Section 4.7.3, no obstruction of vehicular traffic patterns. Remedy within 72 hours or face $50 daily fines. She'd clearly rushed this through while the board was still smarting from my questions about spending at the last meeting. Here's where 22 years of reading electrical code paid off. When something doesn't line up, you start tracing the circuit until you find the fault. That night, I dove into municipal law like I was troubleshooting a dead panel. 3 hours of cross-referencing city ordinances and county regs later, I struck gold. The city code doesn't just allow my trash can where it is, it requires it. Within 3 feet of the curb on collection day. An HOA authority stops at the property line. They can't regulate the public right-of-way. I'd even read about a California homeowner who beat their HOA with the same argument. Over the weekend, I built my defense like I was prepping for my contractor's exam all over again. I installed a Ring doorbell pointed right at the curb, $47 for peace of mind. I hired a surveyor to confirm my placement matched city specs. I asked Mrs. Olivia for a written statement. Her hands shook as she signed. "I don't want trouble," she whispered. "But this isn't right." While I was documenting, Brenda was building a social media case. She went on Nextdoor posting about reckless homeowners endangering children and dangerous corner obstacles forcing responsible drivers into oncoming traffic. Her 3 loyal supporters cheered her on. Everyone else thought she'd lost it. Then my buddy Dave from the city permit office called. "Your corner's famous," he laughed. "We got 4 complaints about your hazardous trash can, all submitted between 2:47 and 3:02 a.m. different witnesses. Exact same writing style. Either your neighborhood has 4 insomniacs with identical grammar, or someone's working overtime." By Thursday's board meeting, I had a folder thick enough to stop a nail gun. The community center smelled like industrial carpet cleaner and 1,000 boring meetings. 12 homeowners showed up, a record that had President Thornfield adjusting his tie every 30 seconds. Brenda sat at the table in a navy blazer that screamed, "I mean business." But her hand trembled when she picked up her water glass. She knew something was coming. When old business came up, I stood. "I'd like to address the violation notice regarding trash can placement." The room went quiet. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. I read the city ordinance aloud. I showed the survey confirming compliance. I dropped the real punch casually. I'd consulted with property rights attorney Amanda Sterling, who found the selective enforcement especially interesting. Brenda went pale. Gerald cleared his throat 3 times. "Well, this requires further review. We'll, table the matter pending additional consideration." Translation. They had nothing and everyone knew it. Brenda wasn't done. In the parking lot afterward, under buzzing security lights, she cornered me. "You think you're so smart?" she hissed, loud enough for the dozen neighbors still outside to hear. "People like you come into decent neighborhoods and think rules don't apply. Well, this is just the beginning." Mrs. Rodriguez on Maple Street gasped. Jim Torres, our maintenance guy, suddenly became fascinated with his keys. The racial undertones hung in the humid October air like smoke. My phone, propped in my shirt pocket, recorded every word. That night Emma asked why the mean lady hated us. Tyler wanted to know if we'd have to move again. I told them it would work out, then lay awake calculating the cost of this war. 3 cans destroyed, 14 hours of documentation, legal fees piling up. But something had shifted. Neighbors were murmuring about board overreach, whispering about selective enforcement. Brenda's parking lot tirade had confirmed what many suspected. This wasn't about safety or standards. It was about power and putting people she didn't like in their place. Next morning, she didn't ram the can. She crept past slowly, sizing it up like a general studying enemy fortifications. The pattern had changed. Bigger trouble was coming. November arrived like a slap of cold air, and Brenda hit just as hard. While I was savoring my small victory, she'd spent weeks combing through our bylaws like a prosecutor building a RICO case. The barrage came in waves. First, violation for grass height. Apparently my lawn was 2.75 inches instead of the 2.5 maximum. Then, mailbox color. My once approved heritage blue had faded into unauthorized weathered navy. Then, 3 tiny tears in window screens you'd need a magnifying glass to see. Each violation came with a $50 fine and 10-day payment deadline. So I spent a Saturday walking the neighborhood with a tape measure and camera. I found identical violations on 14 other properties. Gerald's lawn was pushing 3 inches. Mrs. Patterson's mailbox was almost the same shade as mine. Half of Maple Street had hail-damaged screens. Yet somehow only I was getting official notices. While she played bylaw hitman, I had coffee with my friend, concrete contractor Dale Kowalski, at Home Depot's contractor desk. I mentioned my trash can situation. He grinned. "You know," he said, stirring sugar with a paint stick, "city code doesn't care what your trash can's made of. Plastic, metal, concrete. You're good as long as it holds garbage and meets size rules." That planted a seed. 60 pounds of concrete mix. A bit of steel rebar. A standard plastic can modified to hide a solid core. Total cost, $47. Less than what my current stack of fines and replacement cans was adding up to. But before I could enjoy the engineering, I had to push back on the harassment. Tuesday night, I created a photo portfolio of every comparable violation in Pinewood Gardens. Wednesday morning, I filed a formal complaint for discriminatory and selective enforcement. Here's what 30 HOA permits and 2 decades of red tape teach you. Bureaucrats hate their own systems being used against them. My complaint forced the board's hand. Either they applied the rules equally to everyone, or they admitted they were targeting me. Neither option helped Brenda. Then I crunched the numbers on her past violations. In the last year, she'd issued 67 notices. 49 went to single parents, elderly residents, or minorities. Only 18 went to married couples or longtime homeowners. The pattern screamed Fair Housing Act issues. Discriminatory enforcement by a governing body can trigger serious civil rights trouble. The idea of Brenda explaining those numbers to a civil rights lawyer made me smile for the first time in weeks. Friday, I began the concrete project. Emma and Tyler helped mix the cement in the garage while classic rock played on my paint-spattered radio. The smell of curing concrete took me back to helping my dad pour our basement floor 30 years ago. That smell means permanent. The design was simple. From the outside, it looked like any other trash can on the block. Same color, same lid, same wheels. Inside, the bottom half was filled with 60 pounds of steel-reinforced concrete, with drainage holes preserved so it still functioned. It met every written rule. It just didn't move. Monday morning, I wheeled my reinforced can to its usual spot, exactly where the city required it. At 6:15 sharp, I heard the familiar rumble. This time, Brenda approached more cautiously, clearly suspicious but not sure why. She hit it at around 15 miles an hour, her standard tap. The sound was glorious. Instead of splintering plastic, there was a dull, solid thunk, followed by a crunch of metal and the screech of her running board bending. The can barely shivered. I watched from the kitchen, coffee warm in my hands, as she sat in the Escalade for a full 30 seconds, processing what happened. Then she backed up and tried again from a different angle. Same result. More damage to her SUV, none to my trash receptacle upgrade. And the best part? It was entirely legal. No ordinance said I couldn't reinforce my can. No HOA rule banned concrete. If she wanted to keep using her Escalade as a battering ram, that was her choice, and her insurance claim to explain. Over the next week, She made increasingly creative attempts to knock over my concrete fortress. Each time, the can stood its ground. Each time, her pearl-white Escalade picked up new scars. By Friday, she'd racked up nearly $800 in damage. My trash can had a couple of scuffs that only made it look more convincingly ordinary. The neighborhood was noticing. And for once, Brenda wasn't scripting the story. By mid-November, Brenda had shifted from overzealous busybody to full-blown amateur detective. She was so fixated on my trash can that I'm convinced she was dreaming in flowcharts about it. Mrs. Olivia called one Tuesday, voice hushed. "Marcus, that woman was in your driveway last night with flashlight and some kind of scale. I watched from my bedroom window. She was trying to weigh your trash can." I laughed at the image. Brenda in her blazer, sneaking up my driveway at midnight, wrestling a bathroom scale under my bin. Her investigation grew from there. Jim Torres mentioned she'd cornered him at the hardware store, grilling him about who'd been buying concrete lately. My social media suddenly had a new follower, Brenda, combing through posts about my weekend projects. Then she tried weaponizing the city again. A building inspector knocked Thursday afternoon. Guy named Pete, the picture of someone who'd rather be anywhere else. "Got a complaint about unauthorized concrete structures," he sighed, clipboard in hand. "Something about unpermitted work on your property." I walked him around to the can. He looked at it for maybe 30 seconds, snorted, and shook his head. "It's a trash can, not a foundation. No permit required. No code violations. Honestly, I've seen people build entire sheds with less scrutiny." Next came an HOA letter demanding immediate access to my property for a compliance verification inspection. Clearly written by Brenda and rubber-stamped by Gerald. They wanted to look at my exterior modifications for safety issues. Too bad for them, I'd already spent nights reading case law on HOA authority and the Fourth Amendment. In Narstedt v. Lakeside Village and similar cases, courts made it plain. HOAs can't go on fishing expeditions on private property without a specific cause or emergency. My response was polite but firm. No access to private property without a court order or real emergency. If they wanted to admire my trash can, they could do it from the sidewalk like everyone else. Meanwhile, Brenda's SUV was becoming a rolling advertisement for concrete. Each morning collision added to the tally. The running board drooped like a broken wing. The front bumper had spiderweb cracks. One headlight rattled when she drove by. Word spread. At the coffee shop, I overheard 3 different groups talking about that crazy woman who keeps hitting the same trash can. Mrs. Rodriguez had started timing her morning routine. The teenagers on Elm Street had a betting pool on whether today's hit would take off a new piece of her front end. At dinner one night, Emma said, "Dad, kids at school are asking if we're the house with the concrete can lady. I'm not sure if I should be embarrassed or proud." Tyler asked, dead serious, "Can we sell tickets? $5 a seat. I could pay for college just off the front row demolition derby." The turning point came when Patricia Lopez, the one sane board member, pulled me aside at a neighborhood gathering. By the coffee station, speaking low, she dropped the real bomb. "Marcus, you should know. Brenda's been having private meetings with Gerald about expanding enforcement authority. She wants powers for inspections, contractor approvals, even material restrictions." Then Patricia lowered her voice further. "She's also been pushing specific maintenance contracts. Every time we discuss the budget, she has pre-written proposals from this one company I've never heard of." That night, I switched from defending myself to investigating her. If Brenda was this obsessed with controlling projects and steering contracts, maybe it wasn't just about power. Maybe it was about money. Public records are beautiful things when you know where to look. Business filings, contractor licenses, municipal contract databases, they all tell stories. By Sunday night, I realized Brenda's obsession with my trash can wasn't just petty control. I was blocking evidence of a crime. I started simply. Searched the state business registry for Whitmore. There it was. Whitmore Construction LLC, formed 6 months earlier. Owners, 40% held by Brenda Whitmore. President, her husband, Richard Whitmore. The timeline made my skin crawl. Company formed in May. First HOA maintenance bid in July. My polite questions about repair costs at the September 3rd board meeting. Full-blown harassment over my trash can starting 12 days later. 2 hours later, I had the whole ugly picture. Over 4 months, Whitmore Construction had landed 7 HOA maintenance contracts. Landscape edging, sidewalk repairs, community center touch UPS, playground maintenance. Total, $23,400. On every bid, they'd undercut the competition by $50 to $100. Just enough to win, not enough to seem blatantly suspicious. A marked deck. Meeting minutes showed something worse. Brenda had voted to approve every one of those contracts. No disclosure of ownership. No recusal. 7 contracts. 7 conflicts of interest. 7 violations of state nonprofit law. I remembered from my legal reading. Board members have a fiduciary duty to disclose financial interests. Hiding them opens the door to civil suits and criminal fraud charges. But when I lined up all the dates, something else clicked. My first gentle chat with her about the trash can, September 15th, came right after I'd asked why our HOA repair costs were skyrocketing. My concrete trash can wasn't just an obstacle for her Escalade. It was protecting evidence that she'd been siphoning money from 127 homeowners. I printed everything, backed it up on 3 cloud accounts, and emailed the whole file to attorney Amanda Sterling with a short note. Urgent. Potential criminal fraud. The power dynamic had flipped. Brenda thought she was dealing with a pushover electrician mad about a $23 bin. What she actually had was a neighbor who'd just traced $47,000 in questionable expenditures and was done playing nice. Tuesday morning, she hit my concrete fortress again. By then, the Escalade had taken over $1,200 in damage. The can was still rock solid. But for the first time, I wasn't thinking about trash cans, bylaws, or the morning show she put on. I was thinking about justice. That night, my garage turned into a war room. I cleared off the workbench, dragged in folding tables, and taped charts and timelines to the wall with red string connecting contracts, meetings, and harassment incidents. It looked like something from an FBI show. By 7 p.m., the core team arrived. Mrs. Olivia came first, clutching jasmine tea and looking braver than she felt. Jim Torres showed up still in his work uniform. Patricia Lopez brought a pile of HOA financials she'd quietly copied. Dale walked in last with a box of donuts, grinning like we were planning a surprise party instead of a takedown. Here's what we're up against, I said, taping up the final chart. On one wall, $23,000 in shady contracts, 7 clear conflict of interest votes, 47 documented harassment incidents, photos of Brenda's increasingly mangled Escalade. Patricia let out a low whistle. I knew something felt off about those contracts, she said. Every time I questioned expenses, Brenda had a rehearsed speech ready. Dale studied the car damage. That bumper alone is a $2,000 repair, he said. And with the alignment issues she's causing, she's going to burn through tires. Your concrete can is teaching her a very expensive physics lesson. We spent an hour planning a forefront campaign. Jim would quietly document any retaliation. Mrs. Olivia would coordinate door-to-door outreach. Patricia would work inside the board to build support for an audit. Dale would be our construction expert. Amanda, the attorney, confirmed our legal angle. Harassment, fraud, and board misconduct were all in play. Timing was everything. Move too soon and she might destroy records. Wait too long and she could cover more tracks. Wednesday, I started knocking on doors with a neat presentation folder, clear charts, copies of contracts, the harassment timeline. The response was overwhelming. 89 residents signed a statement supporting property rights. 34 demanded an immediate financial audit. 12 volunteered to speak at the next board meeting. Mrs. Rodriguez almost closed the door on me, then listened. 5 minutes later, she was signing so hard the paper nearly tore. She tried to find me because my trash can was out 15 minutes early, she snapped. 15 minutes. Like the garbage police are out here with stopwatches. Patterns emerged. Brenda's hardcore defenders were older, well-established homeowners who'd benefited from preferential treatment. The undecided were newer residents scared of property values or retaliation. The rest? They were ready for a reckoning. Media prep took 3 days. Channel 7's investigative unit specialized in this kind of story. Reporter Sarah Kim had covered HOA scandals before. I assembled a press kit, clean timelines, legal opinions, and a 12-minute highlight reel of Brenda's daily collisions. On Facebook, the Pinewood Gardens Transparency Group took off 67 members in 4 days, sharing their own stories of harassment and weird finances. Someone posted a time-lapse of her morning run set to circus music. It spread like wildfire. Meanwhile, my concrete trash can kept doing double duty as evidence and entertainment. Thursday morning's collision, number 53, left one headlight hanging like a loose tooth. Kids started coming early to the bus stop to watch. Emma's friends were calling us, "That house with the indestructible trash can." Tyler made 50 cents a view from classmates to watch the collision compilation on his phone. By Sunday night, everything was in place. Board meeting, Tuesday. Media interviews, Wednesday. Criminal complaints, Thursday. 118 residents pledged to attend the showdown. 17 promised to speak. The coalition was set. The evidence was airtight. Brenda had no idea the hammer was about to drop. The weekend before the board meeting, Brenda went off the deep end. Desperation smells like burnt coffee and cold sweat, and it was pouring off her. Saturday at 2 a.m., I woke to the hiss of spray paint. From my bedroom window, I saw a figure crouched by my trash can, lit by the motion lights. By the time I grabbed my phone and got outside, they were gone. The can now had the word "move" scrawled in orange across the concrete. Spray paint on concrete pressure washes off in 30 seconds. Security cameras, on the other hand, preserve every frame, including the license plate of a pearl white Escalade parked 3 houses down. Monday, an inspector from the gas company showed up because someone reported suspicious digging that could threaten underground lines. 2 hours later, after scanning the yard, he shook his head. "Nothing here," he said. "No digging, no disturbance. Whoever called this in has either terrible eyesight or other issues." Tuesday, Jim caught me at the hardware store, frowning. "She hired Riverside Security to watch your house," he said. $200 a day to surveil a trash can dispute. She's lost it. Fine. She could watch me. I was watching her harder. My upgraded cameras picked up her late-night drive-bys, porch stakeouts, and obsessive photo-taking. Her behavior was unraveling, and I was documenting every thread. Wednesday brought the trigger that truly made my blood boil. Emma came home in tears. Brenda had been telling another parent that certain influences were bad role models for neighborhood kids. The implication and the racial angle were crystal clear. That night, I hired Beth Morrison, a retired detective who specialized in harassment cases. For $200 a day, she started documenting Brenda's stalking and escalation patterns, building a professional record for the DA. The sabotage kept coming. Someone poured what looked like battery acid on my concrete can. It left a stain. That was it. Anonymous complaints hit the city about my lawn, my truck, my permits. Fake 1-star reviews hit my business listing. Then Friday, Tyler yelled from the driveway, "Dad, what's this thing under your truck?" Magnetic mount, little box, blinking lights, a GPS tracker, professional grade, about a $300 device, and absolutely illegal to plant on someone's vehicle without consent. We photographed it, removed it, and I drove straight to the police station. Officer Derek Martinez took the report. "Mr. Holloway, this is no longer a neighbor spat," he said. "Unauthorized tracking, harassment, vandalism, this is criminal. We're opening an official case." Meanwhile, Brenda had filed a $3,200 insurance claim, claiming road hazard damage from a city street. Unfortunately for her, my Ring camera footage showed deliberate ramming of my trash can from multiple angles across multiple days. When State Farm's investigator called, I sent over the compilation. 53 collisions, timestamps, witness statements, even Dale's assessment of damage patterns. Their response was immediate. "Ma'am, this isn't road hazard damage," the investigator told her. This is intentional property destruction. We're denying your claim and forwarding this to our fraud unit. On Facebook, our group had grown to 94 members swapping stories. Mrs. Patterson reported harassment over her rose bushes. The Johnsons on Oak Street got violation notices for their kids' sidewalk chalk. Even Gerald was starting to distance himself. Saturday morning brought collision number 57. This time, her bumper came completely off and landed in my driveway. Watching her crawl around in business attire, collecting plastic shards while neighbors peeked through blinds, was almost sad. Almost. By Sunday evening, we had everything. Harassment documented, fraud exposed, witnesses lined up, financial records ready. The board meeting was no longer a confrontation. It was going to be a public execution. Monday morning, 12 hours before the showdown, Gerald called an emergency closed-door board session about liability concerns. 3 board members and the HOA's attorney from Prescott and Associates, Harold Masterson's son, packed into the office. Through the blinds, Patricia texted me updates. "Brenda's claiming you made terrorist threats," she wrote. "Wants emergency powers to seize dangerous modifications. Harold looks like he'd rather represent serial killers." They'd also tried a clumsy cover-up. Someone had backdated conflict of interest disclosure forms for Whitmore Construction. Unfortunately for them, the email server timestamps didn't match the fake dates. You can't retrofit ethics. At the same time, State Investigator Maria Santos was issuing subpoenas for HOA financials, meeting minutes, and insurance correspondence. The paper trail read like a slow-motion train crash. Tuesday afternoon, I got a call I didn't expect. Richard Whitmore. His voice was thin. "Marcus," he said, "this has to stop. She spent $8,000 on lawyers, repairs, and surveillance. Our insurance dropped us. The business is losing contracts. What would it take to make this go away?" For a second, I almost felt bad. Then I remembered the GPS tracker under my truck, my kids scared in their own home, and months of attacks. "Richard," I said, "your wife stalked us, vandalized my property, committed insurance fraud, and stole from 127 homeowners. This doesn't disappear with an apology and a check." 2 hours before the meeting, Brenda pulled one more desperate stunt. She filed for an emergency restraining order based on doctored voicemails, fake photos, and statements from witnesses who didn't exist. Judge Patricia Williams dismissed it without a hearing. "Miss Whitmore," she wrote, "these recordings are clearly edited, the images are staged, and the listed witnesses cannot be located. Filing false evidence is contempt of court. Consider yourself warned." By then, her problems were multiplying. The insurance commissioner had Maria Santos building a fraud case. The DA was reviewing stalking and harassment charges. The IRS had received documentation about her undeclared Whitmore Construction income. At 5:30 p.m., the community center lot looked like Black Friday. Cars lined both sides of the street. Neighbors walked in carrying folding chairs and handmade signs. Channel 7's van arrived, then Channel 12, and a Metro Weekly reporter. Inside, it was standing room only. 118 residents in a room built for 40. 15 media people setting up tripods. The air was hot with body heat and tension. I wheeled in my concrete trash can and parked it beside the podium. Exhibit A. The symbolism wasn't subtle. The can that wouldn't move had brought an entire corrupt system to a halt. Brenda came in late, flanked by Harold Masterson's son, wearing black like she was attending her own funeral. Her usual stiff confidence had been replaced by twitchy glances toward the exit. Gerald sweated through his shirt. Harold opened with some bland lawyer talk about frivolous complaints and disruptive residents, but was cut off when Mrs. Olivia rose, clutching a stack of sworn statements. "Excuse me," she said, voice steady, "but which one of us has been committing insurance fraud and taking money from our HOA?" The room erupted in applause and nervous laughter. 17 neighbors took turns at the mic with stories of harassment, bogus violations, and unexplained spending. At exactly 6:45, right as Brenda started dodging questions about Whitmore Construction, Officer Martinez walked in with a folder. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, but I have a warrant to serve regarding insurance fraud and stalking. Color drained from Brenda's face. Harold whispered frantically. Gerald looked like he might pass out. Gerald's voice cracked as he called for public comments. I stood, walked to the podium, and plugged in my borrowed projector. The room went quiet except for the whir of cameras. This isn't about trash cans, I began. It's about transparency, accountability, and stopping corruption before it wrecks our neighborhood. I walked them through the story. First, the harassment. 57 collisions, GPS tracker, spray paint, false complaints, private security, smearing my family. Every piece documented. Then, the fraud. Whitmore Construction LLC, business registry records, 7 HOA contracts totaling $23,400, and 7 votes Brenda cast approving payments to her own company without disclosure. I projected the payment timeline. Every month you wondered why dues were going up, I said. Now you know. They were funding Mrs. Whitmore's family business. The room buzzed, anger building. Then we played the highlight reel. 12 minutes of her Escalade slamming into my trash can from every angle, set to the raw sound of crunching plastic, bending metal, and neighbors' shocked reactions. Finally, I turned to her. Mrs. Whitmore, I said, steady. You've blown $3,400 on lawyers, destroyed your own $60,000 SUV, committed insurance fraud, stalked my family, and tried to weaponize this HOA over a $23 trash can. But the real crime is the $47,000 you siphoned from your neighbors through your construction company. The reaction was instant. People who'd been quietly irritated about fees suddenly had a face and name for their anger. Mrs. Rodriguez jumped up, shouting in rapid Spanish. Teenagers clapped like it was a concert. That's when Brenda snapped. She exploded out of her chair. This is harassment, she shrieked, voice hitting dog-only frequencies. You people don't understand property values or standards. You come into good neighborhoods and act like rules don't apply. The racial undertones weren't even undertones anymore. Channel 7's camera zoomed in as she jabbed her finger at Mrs. Olivia, ranting about certain elements, ruining the community. Harold tried to pull her back. She shoved him away, grabbed my presentation boards, and started tearing at them. Jim and 2 neighbors gently restrained her while she flailed and sobbed. I built this community, she wailed, mascara streaking down her cheeks. I protected property values. I sacrificed everything for standards. Nobody was buying it. Gerald tried to call a recess. Nobody moved. Patricia stood and, into the chaos, made the motion everyone was waiting for. I moved to immediately suspend Brenda Whitmore from the board pending criminal investigation and a full financial audit. The vote was 4-0. Brenda didn't vote. Hard to raise your hand when you're handcuffed to a chair. Justice served concrete cold. Within 48 hours, her world fell apart. Tuesday morning, she submitted a bitter 2-line resignation letter claiming a hostile environment. Thursday, the DA filed insurance fraud charges. Up to 6 months jail time and $5,000 in fines. Her insurance license was revoked Friday. Whitmore Construction's contractor certification was suspended the same day. The emergency audit by Patterson and Associates found exactly what we suspected: $47,000 in overcharges and questionable contracts. By Christmas, every homeowner got a $371 refund check. Best holiday bonus the neighborhood had ever seen. Richard called me one last time, sounding hollow. The civil settlement check is in the mail, he said. $12,500 like we agreed. Brenda's moving to Florida to live with her sister. I almost pitied him. Almost. Then I remembered the tracker, the smear campaign, and my kids afraid to walk outside. Some lessons are expensive. This one cost them everything. Our HOA did a complete 180. Patricia Lopez won the special election for board president in a landslide. She ran on transparency and resident involvement, and delivered. We now have strict conflict of interest rules, monthly financial reports, and open contractor bidding that puts some cities to shame. The first big project under the new regime? Playground renovation. Funded entirely by the recovered embezzlement money. Watching Emma and Tyler help design the new equipment alongside neighbors who once whispered about our problem household felt like closure. The impact spread beyond Pinewood Gardens. Holloway v. Pinewood Gardens HOA ended up cited in a dozen Ohio property rights cases. The state passed an HOA Accountability Act, requiring financial disclosures and routine audits that investigators dubbed the gold standard. Channel 7's investigative series won a regional Emmy. Sarah Kim still calls when she needs a quote about HOA reform. The collision videos have over 200,000 views on YouTube now, inspiring residents from Toledo to Cincinnati to push back against overreaching boards. My concrete trash can become a local monument. We moved it into the community center lobby, mounted a plaque on it, Property Rights Protected, 2023. New homeowners hear the whole story at orientation. Contractors ask to see the famous "Can that took down a corrupt board." Out of everything, the best part has been the way the community healed. Every September, we host the Concrete Can Days Festival. Bounce houses, barbecue, homeowner rights workshops. Last year, we drew over 800 people from 3 nearby developments. We turned our worst months into an annual celebration of saying no to bullies. I used my settlement money to start the Marcus Holloway Property Rights Scholarship. So far, 4 kids have gone to college with its help. The only requirement: show creative problem-solving in the face of institutional opposition. Basically, we're funding the next generation of polite troublemakers. Emma wrote her college essay about fighting corruption with concrete evidence and got into 3 journalism programs. Tyler started a YouTube channel, Suburban Justice, tracking HOA disputes across the Midwest like a teenage investigative reporter. My custody case improved dramatically. The evaluator noted that kids benefit from seeing a parent stand up for what's right through legal channels instead of rolling over or getting violent. My electrical business exploded with referrals. Turns out, if you can methodically dismantle a corrupt HOA, people trust you not to cut corners on their wiring. Sometimes David beats Goliath, but only when David shows up with evidence, allies, and 60 pounds of steel-reinforced concrete. Got your own HOA horror story? Drop it in the comments. Let's build a database of nonsense and help each other fight back. Subscribe if you want more stories where the little guy wins with preparation, patience, and timing. Not just rage. Justice tastes best when it's shared, and when it comes with paperwork, community support, and one very indestructible trash can. Thanks for watching HOA Stories, where the HOA Karens finally meet their match. If this tale made you cheer, cringe, or both, hit like, leave your reaction below, and subscribe so you don't miss the next wild HOA saga.